In this video, we'll see how to connect to a Linux server in the cloud using Mac OS X without needing to use passwords to authenticate. Well, to start off with, we are accessing resources provided by systemongrid.com. They provide Linux servers in the cloud for you to set up and manage. Their entry-level server is free for a year, and that's what we're using. So thanks, System on Cloud, for providing this resource. It makes running this class much easier. And here's information on that. Okay, so here's our environment, our local computers here. We're using Terminal to be able to access our remote server through the cloud. Currently, we have to supply a password to be able to authenticate. But now, to be able to authenticate without a password, we're going to create an SSH public key private key pair. And we'll do that on the server. The truth is, we can build it either on the local machine or on the remote machine. We've got to get part onto each of those machines. But we'll build it on the server and then bring the necessary things down here. And so to do that, we're going to use a statement called SSH keygen. That will then generate the public key and the private key pair. And then we'll need to do something to be able to get that private key from the server over here to our local machine so that we can use that information during the login process. So I'll open up Terminal and I'll log into my remote server. It should prompt me for a password. And here I am authenticated. So now recall that when we log in, we'll be in the home directory for this user, so the authenticated user. So pwd should show us we're in the Ubuntu folder, which is where we want to be. So now we're ready to type that command, ssh-keygen. We are going to tell it the type is RSA. This is where you want to save it, and we are going to accept all the defaults. Now you'll notice that it's going to put it in a folder called .ssh, and it will create that folder for us. And the file name for the private key is going to be ID_RSA, and I'll accept that as the default. Now it tells me I already have one there, and that's because I've already gone through this example under Windows. Do we want to override it? Yes, that will be fine. Enter a passphrase. That's just to encrypt this file. It would provide increased security, but every time I use the file, I'll have to type that password in, and so I'm going to skip that here. And we've now generated that file. So we can go ahead and take a look at that. I'm going to change directories to .ssh, and we should be able to now see that we've got an ID_RSA and an ID_RSA pub. So this is the public key and this is the private key. So at this point, we've now created we've created two keys. You may not have an authorized keys file here, and that's okay. When we create it, or when we add the public key here to the authorized keys, then you'll see that right there. In fact, let's go ahead and do that now. So step one is to get this public key indicated as one of the authorized keys. So first, let's just take a look at that public key. And so that's what it looks like. It's just a key. It's an encryption key. And so what I need to do is I need to get that onto the end of my authorized keys file. Now, even if your authorized keys file isn't there, this will do just fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say cat. That will just take whatever file I specify here and display it out to the screen. Well, that's what I did here, but instead of putting it to the screen, I want to append it to my authorized keys file. So I will take the name of the file that I want to append, and I will do a double right arrow. It's a greater than sign twice, and then I will put it to authorized keys. And so now, if I was to take a look at that authorized keys file, we should see that I've got a couple of keys in it. One that I did in an earlier example, and then this one. So here's the key that I generated when working with my Windows machine, and now here's the key I've generated with my Mac machine. You'll probably have just one in that file, and that's just fine. Okay, so I need to get the private key copied down to my machine. So right now I'm operating on that server, so I will just exit out of this. Now I'm on my local computer, and I'm ready to copy that file down. So to do that, I'm going to use secure copy. So SCP, I put the source file first. The source file is going to be that file on the server. So I'm going to put here the username, Ubuntu, at my IP address. So that gets me to the server. Now I will put a colon, and now I'm going after the file. That file is at home/.ssh/id_RSA. So that's my source file. I'll put a space, and then I'll put my local file. Well, I'm in the folder that I want to put it in. I'm in my home folder, and so I will just say dot, which will specify the home folder. I'll press enter. It should prompt me for the password. And if it finds the file, it will copy it down. So now I've got a local copy of that file. So now I'll just arrow back up to my SSH command. Now I'm going to supply that path to that key file. So -i and then the name of the file, id_RSA. Now when I hit enter, it should use that file for authentication without having to put in the password. And here I am now logged into that server without having to enter my password. And so that's the process. Generate a private key, public key pair. Make sure the public key ends up in the authorized keys file on the server. Get the private key onto the desktop and use it for authentication. And that'll let you log in without needing to specify your password.